and they do fine. We had a big pot like this in front of our house. When the kids were learning to drive a stick shift, they accidentally ran into it and cracked it. But you know, that darn thing held together for 5 or 6 years after they had put a crack in it. So the ceramic pots, the heavy ceramic pots, are an investment, but they are worth the investment because they just last and last and last. Most of these are Vietnamese, Chinese, and if you pick them up, if you ever try to move one, very heavy. So put it where you want it and then plant it. But there's a lot of less expensive pottery out there, but it's very thin. And you can tell, if you can lift it really easily, it's a thin pot. It probably will not take our winters as well as the heavier ones. You'll see some cracking, some crazing in it. So, you know, if it's something you really want, make the investment and buy some nice pots. I have a mix. I have some plastic out there because maybe I just want to fill in a spot, so I'll throw a plastic container in. You know, each pot has its use. The wooden ones, I really like the wooden ones. I like the wooden metal that they're coming out with now. I have found that wood in our area, you might get 2-3 years out of it, but that wood just breaks down. Between the sun and the moisture and the heat and the cold and all that kind of stuff, it doesn't hold up as well. So, you know, think about where you want to use your pot, how you're going to use your pot. Is it just going to sit on your porch table? If so, that's fine. Maybe you just need a lightweight pot that you can move around. If it's going to be by your garage and you don't want it disappearing, get a heavy one, because I'll guarantee you nobody's going to steal this pot because they could not move it, especially once it's planted. In your pots, make sure you have good drainage. You want to have drainage in there. Too many people think, oh, I don't, you know, it doesn't matter, maybe one little hole. But you want some good drainage because almost all your plants do not want to sit constantly soggy. You will get root rot. And your plants, once they get rotted, there's no coming back from it. So good drainage is essential. If you don't want them draining onto your patio or your deck, get a good saucer and put a saucer underneath it because it needs to drain. Because when you water your pot, you want to make sure you're watering the entire pot. You know, too many times we're like, oh, I don't want it to get on my patio. Okay, I'm done watering. Well, that's not enough for us here in Arizona. We're very, very dry. You wouldn't know it from this past winter, but you know, in the summer heat, you really need to give a good drink to your plants. You need to saturate the entire root ball. So if you don't want the water getting on your patio, make sure you have a good saucer under there. The other thing I recommend, it makes a big difference, is if you can get either pot feet or a little brick or something just to pop your plants up a little bit so they get a little bit of air circulation underneath the pot. It'll make a big difference for your plants. You can get some rocks from your yard, a little piece of wood, a brick, anything, because you're probably not going to really see it because you're just going to kind of stick it underneath. So that you just get a little bit of air circulation. It makes a big difference for the health of your plants. So any questions on that?
Put rocks in the bottom of the pot before you put the dirt in? Does that help drainage?
Not really. I know. And, you know, and I don't know where that got started from. It's like one of those old wives' tales that got started. Not really, because actually they have found the water adheres, the molecules adhere to the rocks. So you actually end up with a really heavy pot that's hard to move, and it really is not of benefit to you. So I don't recommend it.
So if you have a really big pot or an urn-sized thing, it's better just to put all, because I always put like this much tan bark or something at the bottom just so I don't have
Yeah. So her question is, so say she has a really big pot this size, and her question is, do I need to fill the whole thing with potting soil, or can I do something, bark or something in the bottom to kind of fill that bottom part? And my answer to that is, it depends on what you're putting in it. Now, if I'm planting my peach tree in this, I want all soil. I want those roots to have a place to go. If I'm just going to plant some summer geraniums and things that are only going to live through the summer and then they're done, sure, you can do that. You can put a false bottom. Some people use like empty soda bottles, you know, the plastic bottles. And you can see in this one, I just turned a pot upside down, which you could easily do. Turn it upside down, that's filling some space in there, so you're not having to use all potting soil. But if you're doing a shrub, a perennial, or a tree, just do all potting soil. It's better in the long run. But yeah, in these big pots, you can create some false bottoms to them. Yes, ma'am?
When you talk about putting a piece of wood or a brick or something on the bottom so that air can get to it, wouldn't that be covering the hole if you're putting something there? So
Well, it depends on where your hole is. So if your hole's right in the center, maybe you want 2 little bricks or something underneath to kind of prop it up.
But that's where you want the air to get, right, at the hole?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. So depending upon where your drainage hole is, sometimes they're right in the center, sometimes they're at the sides, just depends on where it is. So then we get to soil. So soil is one of those things that I don't know how to put this delicately. People want to buy inexpensive soil, and there's certainly inexpensive soil out there. You can go and buy a huge bag of soil, you know, for like $5. You can certainly do that. I'm going to push our potting soil because I love our potting soil. We had it specially designed quite a few years back now. We used to grow. We had a growing operation out in Chino. So we're like, okay, we need a really good potting soil for our area to grow our plants in. So our grower at the time helped us put this soil together, and it's a terrific soil. It's got peat moss in it, it's got some perlite in it. It's a great soil in that you can see how rich it is, nice and rich. It holds water, but it also drains. So it's not going to hold on to that water forever and create a boggy mess, which some of the soils with those moisture control things in them, sometimes I have found that they tend to be really soggy. And that goes back to that root health. If you have a really soggy soil, you're going to have really unhappy roots in your plants. So a really good soil that drains well is essential. So I would say buy a nice soil. There's a huge temptation to go with the cheaper soils, but a good soil makes a big difference in the health of your plants. The other thing is, do not use soil from your yard. We're trying to avoid digging in that soil, right? Because it's icky soil. Don't put it in your pots, because most of our soils are really heavy clay, and when it gets wet, you're going to have a brick, essentially. You could make bricks, I guess, if you wanted to. But don't use your soil from your yard. And a lot of people ask, well, can I use it in the bottom of the pot? And I'm like, you know, just save yourself a headache and don't do it. So I was filling this pot. We have a big tub of our potting soil over here, and I was filling this to get it started. And now I can't find them. They probably went way down in there. But there were actually some earthworms in there. I was like, oh, worms, yay! So it's a good soil. It's got a little of the perlite in it. When you look at it, you might go, oh, there's sticks in there. Well, it's composted. It's got compost in there. But the sticks actually add to that drainage. So it's adding lightness and air and drainage, pocket holes of air pockets in your soil. So a good soil, very, very essential to that. Things that we can add to our soil when we're making our pot even better. So this is our plant food that we've put together. This is an all-natural 744 slow-release food. I always call this the meat and potatoes, because this is a food you start with. It's mild enough, you can put it right into your pot to start with. Not going to burn, but it's going to provide your plants food for about 3 months. It's that meaty protein that the plants need to keep going, to survive. So, and it gives you directions down here, how much per container. I don't measure it. It would be really hard to burn. I mean, if I dumped the whole thing in, I probably could. But, you know, reasonable amount. I scatter a little bit in. I do it before I've planted, just because it's easier. So I put it in with my soil mix, and then I just mix it up. So that's the all-purpose food. You probably want to feed with this throughout the season, but you only have to use it maybe once or twice because it feeds for 3 months.